Yo, 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 what's up to the people? What's good? What's good? Welcome, OGBAZZ, keeping it 100. You know what it is, Bodycam Reactions NYC. This is the third episode. New channel. Please follow. Hit the likes. This one right here, I want to shout out to Dark Record HQ. Make sure y'all go over there and follow their channel. It's right there. I put it up there to where they can, get the recognition. Also want to put out a disclaimer. This is not my content. This is for educational use. For the youth. It's educational use for the youth and things to do and not to do. Let me put the disclaimer up right now. This video may contain copyrighted material. All content used is for commentary, criticism, news reporting, education, and reaction purposes under Fair Use Section 107 of Copyright Act 1976. Bodycam Reaction NYC provides transformative commentary, analysis, and reactions to footage shown. All footage belongs to the original creators, law enforcement agencies, or respective copyright holders. If you are a copyright owner and would like your material removed, please contact us. Thank you. So let's get to it. Y'all, and see what's going on. I want to know who's the
Wasn't saying there. That's why I called 911 immediately.
They said he used ChatGPT to ask him what to do.
Like, what is going on? Hell happened. Like, I was sleeping a long time.
The call came in as a CPR emergency. That's what deputies from the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office were told. A woman, unresponsive, needs help. They rushed to a home in Ooltewah, Tennessee, February 5th, 2026. They were ready to save a life. They were not ready for what was inside. Blood on the floor, blood on the walls, blood on the stairs, furniture broken, objects shattered, a home that looked less like a residence and more like a crime scene. In the middle of it all, 29-year-old Gabriella Carvalho Perpetuo, unresponsive, already beyond saving. Paramedics tried. She was pronounced dead at the scene. Standing inside that same house was the man who made the call. Not a stranger, not an unknown name. Former NFL linebacker Darren Lee, first-round draft pick, national champion, the only person in that home who could explain what happened.
Yeah, I don't remember him. He was out.
Case stops being just a homicide because before Lee called for help, prosecutors say he was on his phone, messaging ChatGPT, asking what to do about an unresponsive fiancé, asking whether puncture wounds could come from slipping in a shower, asking, allegedly, to explain what investigators were about to walk into. The body cam footage was already rolling when deputies arrived. The blood was already drying on the walls. And somewhere...
Dang. I think ChatGPT could save their life, like, could save people's lives, huh? Or to help you cover, huh? Oh, man.
On that phone was a conversation that prosecutors believe started long before the sirens did. The question this case forces you to ask is a simple one. At what point does a story stop sounding like confusion and start sounding like preparation?
Former NFL linebacker sits in the Hamilton County Jail charged with murder. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Kim Chapman-Whitfield.
And I'm Josh Rowe. The Sheriff's Office reports Darren Lee was taken into custody on Thursday after his girlfriend was found dead at a home in Ooltewah.
Before we go any further, there is a name that deserves to be said clearly. Gabriella Carvalho Perpetuo, 29 years old. People who knew her described someone who made you feel like you mattered the moment you walked into a room.
Dang.
Warm, present, the kind of person who remembered things about you that you had almost forgotten about yourself. She was deeply devoted to the people she loved. That much is clear from everyone who has spoken about her since her death. She had been living in Tennessee, in Ooltewah, a quiet suburb outside Chattanooga. The home she shared with Darren Lee was a rental, and according to reporting, the two of them had only been living there for about 10 days before February 5th. 10 days. That detail matters, not because of what it proves, but because of what it suggests. A new place, a new start, a home that had barely been lived in. We do not know everything about the months leading up to that night. We do not need to fill in what has not been reported. What we do know is this: Gabriella was there, in a house she had just moved into, with a man she trusted enough to build a life alongside, and she never walked out. She is the emotional center of this case, not the NFL career, not the draft position, not the fall from public grace. Her, a 29-year-old woman who deserved to grow older, who deserved to leave that house on her own terms.
Damn.
She did not get that. Darren Lee grew up in Chattanooga, Tennessee, the same city, the same state where this story ends. He was a linebacker, fast, instinctive, built for pressure. At Ohio State, he became one of the most talked about defensive players in the country.
His defining collegiate performance came during the Buckeyes' postseason run, where he was named Defensive MVP of the 2015 Sugar Bowl after recording 7 tackles and 2 sacks.
The Buckeyes won the College Football Playoff National Championship. Lee was on that team. In the 2015 Sugar Bowl, he was named Defensive MVP.
Darren Lee is an American former professional football player whose career was defined by elite athleticism, positional versatility, and early promise at the highest levels of the sport. A linebacker in the NFL, Lee rose from a multi-sport standout to a first-round NFL draft selection after a decorated high school career, a championship run at Ohio State, and one of the most impressive athletic showings by a linebacker in the modern draft era.
By the time the 2016 NFL draft arrived, scouts had been watching him for years. He went 20th overall, first round, New York Jets.
Wow. Jets
That
picked
kind of
him up.
selection does not happen quietly. It comes with cameras, with contracts, with
That's
a
a
version of
fact.
yourself the public decides to own. And for a while, Lee lived inside that version. He played for the Jets, then the Kansas City Chiefs, where he was on the roster during a Super Bowl run, then the Buffalo Bills. His last NFL game was in 2020. What happened in the years that followed has been pieced together through court records and hearing testimony, not rumors, not speculation, court records. By the time February 2026 arrived, Darren Lee was not the rising star from the draft broadcast. He was on probation in Florida and in Ohio, both states, at the same time. At the bond hearing following his arrest, prosecutors did not simply argue he was a flight risk. They argued he was dangerous. They pointed to prior legal trouble involving violence. They pointed to the probation. They pointed to what they described as a pattern, not an isolated moment. The judge heard all of it. This is the part of the story that the draft broadcast never shows. The rise is loud, documented, celebrated. The decline is quieter. Court dates, conditions of release, a name that stops appearing on rosters. By the time Gabriella moved into that Ooltewah home, the man she was living with had a history that prosecutors would later stand up in a courtroom and use as evidence of who he had become.
Damn.
The football career did not cause what happened on February 5th, but it matters because it tells you how far the distance was between who Darren Lee appeared to be and what investigators say they found inside that house. February 5th, 2026 began like any other day in Ooltewah. Quiet neighborhood, residential, streets, nothing that would signal what was coming. The call came in as CPR in progress. That is the language dispatchers use. A person needs resuscitation. Time matters. Move fast. Hamilton County deputies and paramedics moved fast. They pulled up to the house. They went through the front door, and they stopped. Because the scene in front of them did not match the call, a CPR emergency looks like one thing. This looked like something else entirely. Gabriella was found inside the home, unresponsive, severely injured. Paramedics worked on her. She was pronounced dead at the scene. Darren Lee was there, in the house, the man who had made the call. When deputies began asking questions, he offered an explanation. Gabriella had narcolepsy, he said. She may have slipped in the shower, a fall, an accident. Deputies listened, and then they looked around. The living room, the hallway, the stairs, multiple areas of the home, blood, not in the bathroom, not contained to one.
Oh, man. Come on. Darren Lee. You have to... That's crazy. You didn't think about cleaning up or something like that. Of course it's bad, but if you're going to do that, like, you got all the evidence around, like, what's going on with that, people? Damn. It's NFL players, I don't know, they think they're getting paid. There's a lot of ones that have been rich and committed suicide, or they're killing their fiancés and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like, hey, maybe she cheated. We don't know. Some people take it out a different way. You know what I mean? It get to their mental in a different way.
One spot, spread through the house, across walls, floors, and surfaces in multiple rooms. That is not consistent with slipping in a shower. Investigators knew it immediately. The story Lee was offering and the scene they were standing in did not match, not even close. In those first minutes, before any forensics, before any lab results, the nature of this call began to shift from medical emergency to crime scene. The body cam footage was already rolling, every step, every room, every detail being recorded. Investigators did not say that out loud yet, but the question had already formed. If this was a fall, then what happened to the rest of the house?
Detectives say a former NFL player used ChatGPT for advice after killing his girlfriend, allegedly.
That's crazy.
Darren Lee is charged with first-degree murder after his girlfriend's body was found last month in Tennessee. Now prosecutors are presenting evidence, including body camera video and questions they say he asked ChatGPT.
What investigators found inside that Ultua home was not chaos. It was a story told in blood, broken objects, and the kind of detail that does not lie. According to the arrest affidavit and testimony from investigators, blood was found in nearly every room, on the walls, on the floors, on the stairs, and not just inside the house. Blood was also found in a vehicle parked in the garage. Furniture was broken. Objects were damaged. The condition of the home indicated a struggle, prolonged and violent. But there was something else. Drag marks. Marks that suggested Gabriella's body may have been moved after she was harmed, that she did not end up where she was found by accident. Someone had moved her. And then there was the cleaning. Near areas where blood had been found, investigators reported the presence of cleaning supplies. Certain surfaces appeared to have been partially wiped. Not fully, not successfully, but the attempt had been made. Here is something investigators are trained to understand about a scene like this. Blood distribution tells a timeline. When blood appears in multiple rooms, on multiple surfaces, across different heights, that is not consistent with one sudden event in one location. It suggests movement, sequence, a struggle that traveled through a space. Drag marks compound that reading because they indicate post-incident activity, someone making decisions about where things should be found. And cleaning attempts matter most of all, because cleaning is not panic. Cleaning is awareness. It means someone understood in that moment that what had happened needed to be hidden. Lee himself showed signs of injury, facial injuries, lacerations on his hands, wounds on his chest. There was blood inside his cell phone case. Investigators also found drugs, alcohol, and a firearm inside the home. Taken individually, each of these details could be argued. Together, the blood in multiple rooms, the vehicle, the drag marks, the cleaning supplies, the injuries on Lee's own body, they formed a picture that prosecutors would carry into a courtroom. Not a fall, not an accident. A house that had witnessed something far more deliberate, and a scene that someone had tried and failed to alter before help arrived. The scene told investigators one story. The autopsy told them another, and together they left almost no room for the explanation Lee had offered at the door. According to hearing testimony and the arrest affidavit, the medical examiner's findings were extensive. Gabriella had suffered severe brain trauma, a broken neck, or fractured spine. The language used in different parts of the proceedings varies. but the injury was to the cervical region. Catastrophic either way. She had 2 black eyes, heavy swelling across her face, widespread bruising, a bite mark on her body, stab
Damn.
wound, including one to the abdomen.
Bite mark
Each
and
of
all
those
that.
findings, on its own, would raise questions about a simple fall. Together, they demolished it. A broken neck and severe brain trauma do not come from slipping in a shower. Bite marks do not come from a bathroom floor.
Damn.
Stab wounds do not come from narcolepsy. Prosecutors described the manner of death as blunt force trauma homicide. But there was one detail from the autopsy findings that took the investigation somewhere new. Gabriella's legs had wounds on them. Her pants did not. No corresponding cuts in the fabric. No tears. Nothing that would explain how those wounds got there if the clothing had been on her body when they occurred. The implication, the one prosecutors would carry forward, was this. Her clothing may have been placed on her body after some of those injuries happened, not before. After. That is not what an accident looks like. That is what staging looks like. Someone had dressed her, or redressed her, in a house full of blood, with a body that had suffered injuries no fall could explain. Someone had taken the time to make sure she was clothed. By the time the autopsy results were folded into the investigation, the word accident had effectively left the room. What remained was a different set of questions entirely. Not what happened to Gabriella, but when, in what sequence, and what had been done in the time between.
Prosecutors presented more than body camera video in court. They also introduced messages they say Lee sent to ChatGPT.
I wake up and she has 2 swollen eyes. I didn't do anything self-inflicted. She stabbed herself, split her eye.
That's a detective reading messages prosecutors say were sent the day before Lee called 911. Prosecutors also displayed the AI tool's response, which included the line, "Here's what to say," without framing it as police trouble. District Attorney Cody Womp told the court Lee used ChatGPT as a, quote, legal advisor.
He has conversations, dozens of conversations back and forth with ChatGPT over a 2-day period about what he did to Gabriella Perpetua in detail. He asks how to cover it up. He asks what to say to 911.
The house was in the state it was in. Gabriella was gone, and Darren Lee had a phone in his hand. What prosecutors say he did with that phone, in the window before emergency services were contacted, is the detail that took this case from a local homicide to a national story. He was not calling a doctor, not calling family, not calling 911. According to prosecutors, he was messaging ChatGPT. The questions, as described in court, were specific, not vague panic. Specific. He allegedly asked what to do about a fiance who was unresponsive.
I wonder what ChatGPT
He allegedly asked whether puncture wounds could result from slipping in a shower. He allegedly asked what to say if someone wanted to call the police. Prosecutors told the court there were not just 1 or 2 messages, dozens of conversations, spread across roughly 2 days connected to the incident. 2 days. Let that land for a moment. Not a single frantic message in a moment of panic. Dozens. A back and forth. A person working through something, question by question, with a chatbot that does not judge, does not call anyone, and does not remember anything after the conversation ends. Prosecutors described it in stark terms at the bond hearing. They said Lee was using ChatGPT the way someone might use a legal advisor or a defense attorney, building language, testing explanations, asking whether the story he was about to tell could hold up against the scene he was standing in. Here is something worth understanding about digital timelines and why they matter in cases like this. When investigators pull phone data, they are not just reading messages, they are reading a sequence. What someone searched, what someone asked, what time those questions were sent, and what happened immediately after. In this case, prosecutors allege that the ChatGPT conversations came before the emergency call. That sequence, if proven, does not just show what Lee said, it shows what he was thinking before anyone else arrived, before any official version of events was locked in. A phone does not forget the order of things. The defense has not disputed that Lee used ChatGPT. What the defense disputes is what it means. Panic, they would argue, looks like irrational behavior. People in shock do not always act logically. reaching for a phone for any kind of guidance is not automatically evidence of guilt. That argument will matter later, in a courtroom, in front of a jury. But for investigators standing in that house, reading that phone, mapping that timeline, the questions Lee had allegedly been asking were not the questions of someone desperately trying to save a life. They were the questions of someone trying to explain one. Every investigation eventually arrives at this moment. Two versions, side by side, and only one of them can be true. Darren Lee's version as relayed to investigators was this: Gabriella had narcolepsy. She may have had an episode. She may have fallen in the shower. An accident, sudden, tragic, and not something anyone could have prevented. That was the explanation offered at the door. Prosecutors built a different picture, not from theory, from the house itself. Blood in multiple rooms, not one. Drag marks indicating the body had been moved. Cleaning supplies near areas that appeared to have been partially wiped down. A vehicle in the garage with blood inside it. A scene that spread far beyond any single bathroom.
I remember.
Then the autopsy. Severe brain trauma, a broken neck, wounds on her body inconsistent with a fall, clothing that appeared to have been placed on her after some of those injuries occurred. Each finding, prosecutors argued, was another crack in the shower fall explanation. And then the phone. Dozens of ChatGPT messages allegedly asking how to explain injuries, how to describe an unresponsive person, what to say to someone who wanted to call the police. The questions themselves, prosecutors argued, revealed a person who was not confused about what had happened. A confused person calls for help. This person allegedly was crafting a response to what had happened.
Court records also show Lee was arrested in 2023 in Ohio on domestic violence-related charges involving separate incidents. One arrest report says he allegedly threw a phone at a woman which, quote, struck her in the head, causing her ear to bleed, grabbing her neck while punching the pillow beside her, and causing red marks to her neck.
It is important to say this clearly. Darren Lee has not been convicted. His public defender has argued the case is built on circumstantial evidence, no direct witness, no confession, a set of facts that the defense contends can be interpreted more than one way. That is a legitimate legal argument. It is the argument his attorneys are entitled to make. And a jury, not a courtroom gallery, not the internet, will ultimately decide what the evidence means. But here is what makes this particular version gap so difficult to close. The prosecution's case is not built on one thing. It is built on accumulation. The scene, the body, the phone, the timeline, the prior legal history. Each piece on its own might leave room for doubt. Together, they form a sequence that prosecutors believe a jury will find very hard to explain away. Two stories entered that courtroom. One of them is supported by the walls of that house, by the findings of a medical examiner, by the contents of a phone. The other rests on the possibility that all of it, every detail, every finding, every message, could point somewhere other than where prosecutors say it points. When does a defense become a contradiction in the eyes of a jury? That question now belongs to the court.
And that happened.
In October of 2024, Lee was arrested and charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon after pointing a gun at a man. He and Perpetua were at a Florida fish camp when an altercation began between him and several people.
Darren Lee was arrested at the scene on February 5th. The charges were immediate: first-degree murder, tampering with evidence. Two charges that, placed together, signal something specific. Not just that a death occurred, but that someone allegedly tried to shape what came after it. The bond hearing came quickly. Prosecutors stood before the court and made their position plain. Lee should not be released, not because of flight risk alone, because of danger. They pointed to the nature of the alleged attack, the breadth of injuries, the evidence of a prolonged struggle, the condition of the home. They pointed to his probation status, active probation, in Florida and in Ohio, both states, at the same time. They pointed to prior legal trouble involving violence, a history they argued was not a series of isolated incidents, but a pattern the court needed to take seriously. Judge Torrey Smith heard all of it and ordered Lee held without bond. He would not be going home, not pending trial, not on any conditions, without bond. The preliminary hearing followed in March. Prosecutors laid out the framework of their case, the physical evidence, the digital evidence,
You ask
the forensic
ChatGPT
findings.
how much
The
time
judge
you
found
could get.
that sufficient probable cause existed. The case would move toward a grand jury. Another step forward, another door closing behind Lee. And then prosecutors introduced a detail that shifted the stakes of everything. I
don't get why people do that. It's like, why you just can't let the girl go? You know what I'm saying? Like, if it's that bad, like, I'd rather just get out, vanish out your life, period. You know what I mean? Let you suffer on your own.
indicated the case may be eligible for capital punishment, the death penalty. No final determination had been made at the time of reporting. No formal notice had been filed, but the possibility had been raised, officially, in open court. That is not language prosecutors use casually. Capital eligibility requires specific legal findings about the nature of the crime, the circumstances surrounding it, the presence of aggravating factors. By raising it, prosecutors were signaling something to the court, to the defense, and to anyone paying attention. They do not view this case as ambiguous. They do not view it as a tragedy with complicated facts. They view it as a deliberate act, one serious enough to place a man's life on the table alongside his freedom. As of the time this story was reported, Lee remained jailed. No bond, no release date, a grand jury process moving forward. The walls were not just closing in, they had already closed.
Priscilla Thompson joins us now. And Priscilla, there were some strong words from the judge after hearing about some of this evidence.
Yeah, Tom, after hearing this testimony, Judge Tori Smith is allowing this case to proceed. She said, quote, she is even more convinced that the offense was especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel. Now, as for Lee, he remains in jail, and if convicted on that first-degree murder charge, he could face the death penalty.
Domestic homicide cases move through the American court system with painful regularity. Blood evidence, conflicting accounts, forensic testimony, a grief-stricken family waiting for a verdict. These cases are common, devastating, and common. This one became something different. It was not the NFL connection, though that drew early attention. It was not even the severity of the crime, as serious as prosecutors say it was. It was the phone, specifically what was on it, and when. The alleged use of ChatGPT before calling emergency services introduced a question that no true crime case had quite asked before. Not, what did he do? But what did he ask an AI to help him explain? Prosecutors described the chatbot conversations as Lee using the tool the way someone might use a private legal advisor, building language, testing logic, asking whether a particular explanation, puncture wounds from a shower fall, could survive scrutiny. If that framing is accurate, it reframes the entire sequence of events inside that house. It means the first instinct was not to help, it was to prepare. That is what made this case travel, not the blood, not the injuries, not even the arrest. The image of someone standing in the aftermath of a violent death and opening a chatbot, typing questions, reading, responses, trying to find language that would make the scene behind them look like something it wasn't. Technology did not create what happened in that Ultewa home. But prosecutors say it may have revealed something that physical evidence alone cannot always capture: intent. The moment someone shifts from reaction to calculation, from shock to strategy, that shift, if the messages say what prosecutors claim, happened inside a phone, before the sirens arrived, before anyone else entered that house. And that is the question this case leaves sitting in the air long after the courtroom empties. Not just, did he do it? But what does it mean when someone's first move in the worst moment is to ask an AI what to say? Does that reveal panic, or does it reveal something far more deliberate? Digital searching does not lie about sequence. It does not reconstruct what was felt, but it does preserve, with timestamps, exactly what someone was asking and when. There is no verdict to report, no closed case, no final answer. What exists as of the time this story was reported is this: Darren Lee sits in a Hamilton County jail, charged with first-degree murder, charged with tampering with evidence, held without bond. A grand jury process moving forward, prosecutors who have raised the possibility of capital punishment. a defense that
All
maintains
the
the case
houses,
is
why the houses
circumstantial
look the
and that
same?
their client has not been convicted of anything.
I don't want
All
no
of that is
house where it
true,
look the
and
same
all of
like
that remains
everybody else is on
unresolved.
the block.
What is
definitely
not
said I
unresolved,
wouldn't.
what cannot be undone, is this. Gabriela Carvalho Perpetuo is gone, dead inside a home she had lived in for 10 days.
R.I.P.
No verdict changes
Back
that.
10 days?
No legal outcome restores it.
Damn.
No courtroom proceeding gives back what was taken on February
10
5th.
days?
This case will continue. Hearings, motions, a grand jury, eventually a trial, and at the center of all of it, long after the cameras move on and the headlines fade, will be a 29-year-old woman who deserved to grow old, who moved into a new home and never moved out.
Wow.
Her name is Gabriela Carvalho Perpetuo. Remember that name, not his, hers.
Yeah, look at him. Look at him. Bad. Bad. NFL star that just bad. That's horrible, man. It's just like bad. Things give away their whole life. You know what I'm saying? And whole early lives of being a football star, which Darren Lee was good. I remember him. Do remember him now. You know what I mean? Definitely got drafted with the Jets. And that's the Jets. So, you know, he got his whole career life was jinxed. You know what I mean? It was jinxed. You know what I mean? And for the guys, you know what I mean, that's out there making all this money and got away for a girlfriend, you know what I mean? And, you know, if she, I don't know what happened, but because they didn't say what happened, so, you know, but if they cheat, you know what I'm saying, like, or something like that, like, you know, just disappear. It's more women out there, just like it's more men out there for her. You know what I mean? Like, it's not worth going to jail for a long time because you're going to go to jail and she's still going to be fucking. You know what I mean? You're going to go to jail, she's still going to be having sex with other niggas. So it's like, you're not winning there. You know what I mean? If you kill her and you got to go to jail, you know what I mean? It's definitely not worth it there. So it's like, you know, just move on. Move on. And continue to live your life. You know what I mean? It's better to be outside than to be behind the bars for a long time. You know what I mean? It's an unfortunate situation. Salute to the chat. Don't be a rat. Support the comments and be honest. Hit the like button. Comment on what y'all feel about this episode. It definitely was an interesting situation. And this happened this year. I appreciate y'all for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe to the new channel. Appreciate everybody.